I'm already a few weeks into the long journey, following the trickle down to a stream and then a river, tumbling over the pebbles, lively and free, before the dam builders brought it to heel. Less floods released the water downstream in the heat of late summer. We'll have a great irrigation culture, or so they said. But now I'm lost in a maze of channels where the Ovens joins the Murray, following false leads into thick clusters of saplings and landless islands. After Lumbey's Bend I follow trickle lines until they slow and die. Water pools, trees recede, another weir at Yarrawonga. The old word means place of running waters, but trapped water and gravity spill out onto the floodplain. 17% of the river flows out into the Murray Valley irrigation area and feeds a nation. Out on the lake, I follow the old river, a corridor between the drowned trees. While I paddle, I imagine gliding overhead, ibis view, pelican view, seeing the old meanders marked by the white skeletons below. At the weir, another portage. Flip a coin and head to the south bank. Carry my canoe up a rock wall that leads to a railway line. Shoulder the load, walk along the track, stepping from sleeper to sleeper, hoping a train doesn't come around the corner. I chuckle at the thought of an open-mouthed train driver who sees a green canoe with its own arms and legs, striding along the tracks. It's the only way off the water. Remember, we don't build portage tracks in this country. Back on the river, I slide by sheep stations. Dust rising from the yards, rouseabouts calling, kelpies barking. Tom Roberts painted shearing the rams out there. The shearer, pinstriped in red and white, sleeves rolled up, muscular forearm and thigh pinning the ram. The free hand clipping the wool with a pair of shears. Skill and guile. Only the best would shear the precious rams. The artist watching it all at Brocklesbury Station, near Corowa, where 3 years later they held the conference in 1893, began turning the colonies towards federation. Dust is rising in the yards, barefoot tarboys are smiling in the light. Sweat and lanolin linger in the air. Then the barking kelpies fade upriver. Round brown hills fall behind me now. It could still be 1890 out there, somewhere, good years before the drought. Another morning facing the river. The landscape flattened, the meanders broadening into lobes, curlicues, teardrops, written across the river's plain. 60 million years of ooze and mud and winding water. This, I think, is the river I've come to find, the ancient river, in no hurry as it falls ever so gently. You ever wonder where meanders come from? Well, the river just wants to follow the fall line, the steepest line between the highest point and the ocean. So if you had a perfect pane of glass with no imperfections, the water would just run in a straight line down it. But of course that's impossible, especially in nature. So as soon as the river gathers right up on the flanks of Kosciusko and its headwaters, it starts to trickle and run and hits its first obstacle. Let's say a stone, a small stone or something, and gets deflected away from the fall line. And then of course, the river wants to work its way back to the fall line, but it's got so much momentum that it overshoots the fall line and starts out on the other side. Gravity turns it around, it's gained so much momentum, it overshoots the fall line again.
And so the river starts its meandering course almost as soon as it starts to run, until you get down here and you have these giant meanders that come all the way down the river, getting wider and wider until the river takes about 3 kilometres or 3 miles to every one as it heads its way downstream.
I pulled the old book from the tucker box. I have finally reached charted country. Brown watermarks on the pages are like tide lines on a beach, each a memory of an earlier journey. Pages are covered with squiggles and hieroglyphs, little crescents showing beaches and easy campsites, hooks for snags, squiggles for pumping stations, locks, anna branches, billabongs. A whole language to learn, where every river bend has a name. It's good company for my quiet mind, while my body settles into the long routines of the canoe and 1,200 miles of the winding river. Dear friends, after Toke the river changes. I paddle the old green canoe into Barmah Country, a vast redgum forest and swampy plain. At the end of another day, I've escaped the long weekend mayhem and collapse into a grassy campsite. I fall asleep to the sound of crickets and the quiet music of the river. And I dream river dreams. You'll remember, I was a teacher here. It was how I found my way back to the river. Lesson 1. Don't bring that, you might not need it. Lesson 2. Sit, drift, wait, and listen to the river. Lesson 3. Feel the river through your paddle. We tied our canoes together and drifted along in a great raft, slowing ourselves to the pace of the river. Read stories and poems, camped rough, played chess, the set balanced on top of the tucker box. Someone even lit a fire in their canoe, like the old times. Do you remember the lesson of drift? Cast off from the bank, give in to the current, give in. Lay back and watch like a tiny leaf spun the corridor of leaves glide by. And higher up a hint of swallows, and beyond, far, far beyond, a halo of ice ringing the sun. Paint the sky dark as a night, clasp the aperture of eyes shut with a hush. Let it go, let it all go. Words and muscles tense as a city rush. Breathe, breathe, breathe in the mildewy taste of the river's milky skin. Release the weight, let it drift, let it spin, till all the world's a thin washed watercolour. Give in to the current, give in. And what about the lesson of the twig fire? From beneath a fold of bark and the hollow in a tree, from beneath a fallen log that lies in a sleeper cutter's dream, I curled a fist of grass, brittle twigs and leaves. On a bullocky's old fire scar beneath the dripping trees, we kindled the flame to life from a candle stub, and smelt the river's history in that first faint hint of curling smoke. You cleared the ground of fallen branches, each no thicker than your thumb. In summer, one might leap to life and curl into a snake. But here we built the fire, till it part the smoke with its own heat. On that winter morning, with the billy from the river, you warmed your hands, stared into the flames, and a curl of steam rose from your jacket cuff. Then the billy hissed and spat. Watch this, the timing matters. Left hand lift the billy clear, as right cast leaves across the surface of a rolling boil. Just right. Pouring the steaming brew into chipped china mugs, their broken handles lost upriver, I remember cold lips shocked by heat and bitterness, and a final curl of smoke, the twig fire, now a tiny mound of white ash. Right from the beginning, it seemed that Barmah was canoe country. It had to be. Sometimes it was just water, with only the old earth mounds and the odd sandhill poking out. The river miles and miles wide. River becoming country, country becoming river. They didn't stop us paddling in big water back in those days. You can still see where they cut bark canoes from the old redgums, when the sap was running just right. You can still see the old scars where the trunk was bending over, the hull shaped over the fire, seasoned in the sunshine. Travel, fishing, in the backwaters, up and down the river, out across the floodplain in big water. The plain flush with grasses in summer, when the waters retreated. Thousands upon thousands of years of families, ceremony, trade. There was food aplenty. They ate better than the invaders who came from the world's wealthiest nations. A great canoe culture that none of the invaders or settlers bothered to write into the history books. Do you remember? It was Kerr, the pastoralist, who first took fancy to those summer grasses. In 1840 he pushed his sheep north, into the forest. Then the saws came, and the redgums began to fall. Macintosh, Blair and Madrotha all ran their steam mills in the forest, turning redgum first into railway sleepers, as they lay the track from the port of Echuca on the river to the new goldfields of Bendigo. Riches upon riches, gold and timber and wool. But what a price was paid. Oh, what a price. Now I sit here alone in the soft light of the fire and remember. I remember back resting against the canoe, scratching and scribbling on the surface of the paper of that old journal. False starts following the wrong lead, more scratching and scribbling, slowly finding my way. I called that poem, my first for the River Dreams. My evening fire builds a blue ceiling of smoke across the river. Billy water bubbles over orange coals. I throw in a handful of tea, stir it with a redgum twig. The brew stains to tannin, to the memory of headwater. Circles and eddies, and my mind draws down deep into that vortex. A fern frond unwinds before me, springs into a future of rain. A rough-edged boulder is worn round, tumbled, chipped and polished by the river. Right before my eyes, a whole mountainside collapses, slides into the water, messmate gums, stringy barks and all, and the lot is drawn away by the current. I stand and stretch on that rocky ledge, extend and plunge into the swirling current. Bone cold, I head back to the surface. My clothes dissolve and are carried off, so naked I float away downriver, skin staining to tannin. Two kookaburras laugh from their tree as I'm swept past. A wombat tunnels beneath a tall eucalypt, hits a tree root, gives it away, trundles off. Placing back foot on the print of front foot, he leaves the track of a little man. A platypus surfaces, plies an eddy line, dives with a soft plop. I hold my breath, sink low. From the water's silver rim, a ripple then a ring. She surfaces with a crayfish, who no longer lodges beneath a smooth boulder on the bed of the river. The exoskeleton is crushed as the sound of eating is drawn away around the next bend. It's morning on the river once again, when the ibis fly overhead, a single skein of 20 birds soaring at 2,000 feet. Back on the river, launching the canoe, I drift away, float away. Reflections of tree and sky spreading in the wake. When the sun comes hard into the land, it warms all the spaces in the forest, hardens all the trees as a billion redgum leaves start pumping up the river. As the day heats, the canoe rides like a shadow. The redgum trunks all file past, waxing blue and green. Through a vaporising eucalyptus breath, I hear their thin xylem skins sucking hard at the river. The sacred ibis are long gone, drawn away by the horizon. And as the day lengthens and the shadows deepen, I wish I could be up there with them. The ibis, all hollowed-boned and pinions outstretched at the tip of that westward skein. The river snaking its green path beneath, not hurrying yet to meet the blue ocean, somewhere beyond the vast dome of dry brown land. I remember the sheep stations and the jet skis, the sleeper cutters and the sound of the saws, the old trees falling in the forest, the railways pushing their way to the river, and silence. I remember the silence of paddling out onto Barmah Lake in the first light of morning, the sound of black swans talking to each other, the sound of ducks paddling their feet across the surface of the lake as they lift off, the insect buzz of the earth, and the faintest hint of trickling water finding its way downstream. The Barmah will always be the place where I found my way back to the river and learnt what it means, what it really means, to paddle a canoe.